Okay.
No introduction?
I'll introduce you after. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Sue Maskaleris. It's great to be back. It's my fourth time, counting 1977. Wow. This program is called Two to Tango. We're going to be exploring very seductive music known for passion, drama, and elegance. That is the tango. And oddly enough, this first song is called Two for Tango, Two to Tango. You can sail on a ship by yourself, take a nap or a nip by yourself. You can get into debt by yourself on your own. There are lots of things that you can do alone. What takes two to tango, two to tango, two to really get the feeling of romance. Let's do the tango, do the tango, do the dance of love. You can croon to the moon by yourself. You can laugh like a loon by yourself. You can spend a lot, go to pot on your own. There are lots of things that you can do alone. But it takes two to tango, two to tango, two to really get the feeling of romance. Let's do the tango, do the tango, do the dance of love. You can haunt any house by yourself. Be a man or a mouse by yourself. You can act like a king on a throne. Wait a minute, we've got one of those right now in the White House. There are lots of things that you can do alone, but takes two to tango. Very old by yourself, catch a fish or a cold by yourself. You can hoot like an owl on your own. There are lots of things that you can do alone, but takes two to tango, two to tango, two to get the feeling of romance. So do the tango, do the tango, do the dance of love, do the dance of love. Thank you. Some of you might remember that one.
From where? From the sound check.
You tell us. Yes, from the sound check. Now we're going on a musical tour of some South American countries to trace the history of the tango. And to do that, we have a fine tour guide in Mr. Pablo Aslan from Buenos Aires. Pablo just returned from Buenos Aires, where he did 3 weeks non-stop concerts of his own group, as well as played with the Sinfonia Nacional, tangos in every shape and form. I also did a brief stint living in town, as did I, until I was 18. And he's going to tell us a very unlikely place where tango occurred in our own American music.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to our presentation, our show. It's a great pleasure for me. Indeed, I spent glorious 3 months, seminal 3 months in my life here in Short Hills. When I was coming from LA to spend a scholarship semester in New York, I had a friend in the Short Hills that took pity on me and put up with me. Indeed, this story of tango, I spoke with Sue and I said, you know, tango, we speak of Argentine tango, but tango is really a universal rhythm. And we find it all over Latin America, especially in the 19th century. So we took a little trip to find that rhythm, and this program is all about that. And the first place where we're going to find it, or at least the first place we're going to bring to you, is the closest to home that we could, and it's New Orleans. And so this is the St. Louis Blues.
We're just going to give you a little sample where it occurs in this song. St. Louis woman, with all her diamond rings, she pulls a man around with her apron strings. All right, so we shall now play the song in full context from the beginning, as the jazz tune it was. He played me this recording from Louis Armstrong. What year was that?
It was even earlier than Armstrong.
1918 or something.
Yes, 17 or 18.
And that's how the song,
W.C. Handy.
W.C. Handy, that's how it was originally written, with a tango section. So here we go. I hate to see the evening sun go down. I hate to see the evening sun go down, 'cause my baby, he done left this town. Feeling tomorrow like I feel today. Feeling tomorrow like I feel today. I'm gonna pack my trunk and make my getaway. St. Louis woman, with all the diamond rings, she pulls that man around by her apron strings. If it weren't for powder or her store-bought hand, oh, that man of mine, he wouldn't have gone nowhere, nowhere. I got the St. Louis blues, just as blue as I can be. Oh, my man's got a heart like a rock cast in the sea, or else he wouldn't have gone so far from me. very much. We're going to move on to Cuba, to the contradance composer that Pablo turned me on to.
Indeed. It turns out that tango, far from being originally from Argentina, as we found it here in New Orleans, it was even earlier in the 1860s that there was a composer in Cuba by the name of Juan Saumel, who wrote a lot of these contradances that they all clearly had this tango rhythm. And by now you should know that the tango rhythm, the word tango, it has a lot of, it was all over Latin America, and it has a lot of meanings, but mostly it meant the dances and the reunions and the parties of the Afro-Latin Americans. And so when they were having their tangos, they were having the drums and they were having the chanting. And so it was always synonymous with Afro-Latin American music. And when we find it in Cuba in the 1860s, we realize this is when Brahms and Schumann were still alive. So this music goes way back. And so this is a collection of contradances, and we're going to offer you a few of them by Juan Saumel from Cuba.
5 short little pieces. And often they have a habanera feel, which is this feel on the bass line. And I'll let you know which one of those have that. This one's called La Luz, the light. You saw that coming, Thank you. And this one, it sounds a bit like a march, is called La Linda, the Pretty. This one, La Territorial. one that mentions an American composer at the turn of the century, Gottschalk. It's called Memories of Him, or Recuerdos de Gottschalk. And this sounds like a habanera. The last one, thank you, I find unpronounceable, so you can tell us the name.
El Jigote de Trinidad.
However, we still don't know what it means. Thank you. Well, since we got into some habanera bass lines, I'd like to do a very famous habanera. This came from Spain, the very famous La Paloma. When I was looking into singing this, I noticed there were two different Spanish lyrics, one about leaving a maiden in Havana, which didn't appeal to me, and another one, some English lyrics, one that Connie Francis sang, and one that Elvis sang called No More, and that was truly dreadful. So I'm singing the one that Julio sang. So, La Paloma. Canción me recuerda aquel ayer, cuando se marchó en silencio un parecer, se fue con su canto triste a otro lugar, dejó como compañera mi soledad. Una paloma blanca me cantaba viejas melancolías, cosas de amar. Llegan con el silencio de la mañana, y cuando salga vuela a su casa. ¿Dónde va aquí mi voz? Ya no quiero escuchar. ¿Dónde está que mi vida se apaga si junto a mí no paloma blanca me cantaba. Dejas melancolías, cosas de amar. Llegan con el silencio de la mañana. Y cuando salgo a verla, vuela a su casa. ¿Dónde va aquí mi voz? Ya no quiero escuchar. ¿Dónde está que mi vida se apaga si uno a mí no está? Si quisiera volver, yo le iría a esperar cada día, cada madrugada para querernos más. Gracias. Thank you. And while we're on the topic of habaneras, I had 2 very prolific days of composing in January. Back to back, I composed the next piece, Habanera Fantastico, along with the piece that I'll be doing later on with a special guest. 2 consecutive days. This one kind of, it starts with a very typical habanera bass line, and then it turns into kind of a jazz tone poem and has echoes of Ravel and the Impressionists in it. I'm really excited about this piece. This is the first time we are doing it in public, so enjoy. last year here I did a program on comparing ragtime to a Brazilian style called chorrinho, and we did this next piece with Brazilian bass player Itaguara. Now we're going to do the same piece because it was a tango, and composer Ernesto Nazareth. Is there anything you want to say about the piece? Sounds totally different with Pablo. It's very exciting.
Well, as this rhythm, this habanera or contradanza or tango, this almost universal rhythm, boom, 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 moved across Latin America in the 19th century. It made it to Brazil, and in Brazil, indeed, we get recordings from the early part of the 20th century of something called the Tango Brasileiro. So the Brazilians were very much acquainted with the same rhythm. They also had a rhythm that was quite similar with its own dance craze, the machixe. And that's a dance that also made it to the New York circles and so forth. So we're tracing this habanera, tango, contradance rhythm throughout Latin America, and we get to this Brazilian tango. And as Sue said, for a lot of people, this is what we now call the choro, which is the very quintessential Brazilian type of music, but that only, right, and it comes from the machixe and from the early tango. But for those of us who like to hit the books or the archives or the websites for that matter, we discovered that there's something called Brazilian tango before the choro, and this is one of the great composers, Ernesto Nazareth.
And the piece is called Carioca, which is a name of somebody from Rio. Love that piece. Sounds a bit like Chopin to me. We're going to move on to a style that he'll explain called the milonga. And this piece is written by a pianist who's prominent in the new tango movement named Pablo Ziegler, who Pablo's worked with. And Pablo Aslan is prominent in that movement as well, adding jazz elements to bring the tango into present times. The lyrics are by Eladia Blasquez. So if you tell them about the milonga.
Yeah, so by the time we get to Argentina, this rhythm that was so vivacious in New Orleans and so lively in Cuba and so sensuous in Brazil slows down and finds a local type called the milonga. And the milonga was used mostly to recite poetry or to sing or to tell stories. And so it was necessarily a lot slower. Not necessarily more melancholic, but it turned out to be that way because it was slower. And it was used by the gaucho to tell these stories. And the milonga then is almost like a precursor of rapping. Just you have a steady pattern in the guitar, and then you tell your story. And in fact, apparently the word milonga means talk. Like that's milonga, that's rapping, that's just gabbing. So that's the way it was used by the Argentine gaucho. And so out of all these mixtures, you get the La Paloma from Spain that we played arriving in Buenos Aires through the theater. You get the Habanera arriving in Buenos Aires through the port and the sailors and the different ethnicities coming into, particularly to the city of Buenos Aires. And it encounters this milonga, which is slower. And out of that comes not just a music called tango, but a dance called tango. As Sue said, this next milonga is this slow milonga style, and it was composed by a musician who is alive and well and living in New Jersey. So it's a contemporary composition in this style of milonga called Milonga en el Viento, Milonga in the Wind.
And the lyrics describe very poetically the movements of a dancer, a bailarín. viento danzarín que girando va como un bailarín que trepa en cada salto al trampolín más alto y a fuerza de soñar os puedo hacer creer lo fácil que es volar. Bailarín, llevas en tu andar algo muy afín, un galante de alondras, danzando por milonga, la piel de mi milonga es como un sentimiento que enciende, que prolonga el dulce amor del viento. El viento río la envuelve entre sus brazos, la ronda, la enamora, la lleva hasta el confín, la enreda cada paso, igual que un bailarín. Bailarín, tu milonga va, tú con ella ve en puntitas de pie. Thank you. Such a gorgeous piece. Finally, we reached the hardcore tango proper. This one is about the river, the El Marne in Paris, did you say? Yes. And we're going to play it in typical fashion, and then I'll take a kind of jazz approach to the improv. So why don't you tell them a bit about the usual instrumentation that you'll have to imagine?
Well, the one instrument you'll have to imagine to imagine a tango band is the bandoneon, which is the particular type of squeeze box of accordion that get used on tango. In fact, the composer of the piece that we're going to play next, Eduardo Arolas, is an example of the type of musician that took up this instrument. He was the son of French immigrants into Buenos Aires and was born at the very end of the 19th century. And he was first a guitar player, and then when this instrument started circulating around Buenos Aires, that was invented by the Germans, and it was kind of a precarious type of organ that they had invented, a portable organ, and this became the sound of tango over the decades. And when they first started picking it up, they basically wanted to replace the guitar and play it like a rhythm instrument. And with the years, the instrument was improved and the players improved, and by the 1920s there were schools and methods, and eventually it became a conservatory instrument, and orchestras would have 4 or 5, sometimes more, of these instruments in one orchestra. So right now we have 0 So it's just piano and bass. And the other instrument we would have in a typical tango band is a violin, but we'll get to that.
Tell them about your Astoria band. You have like five of them.
We have in Astoria, Queens, we've started something called the Astoria Tango Orchestra, and we have a master bandoneon player who is our coach and mentor, Daniel Binelli, who's lived through some of the glory years of tango. And the rest of the orchestra are people from all over the world. We have a Korean bandoneon player, and we have people from different parts of Argentina. We have an American, Armenian, Argentine violinist. We have an Argentine-American bass player for once. And so it's a multi-ethnic, as tango is. And we tend to play there at Astoria Tango Club on Sundays once a month. So that's the Astoria.
I heard them in
Tango
Lincoln
Orchestra.
Center, and they were phenomenal. How many
That's right.
violins did you have there?
Oh, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 violins, a viola, a cello, and the 4
It was
bandoneons.
phenomenal, this group.
She's saying that. I'm not using words like that for my own work, but it's a lot of fun. How's that? And we'd love to have you there, the Astoria Tango Orchestra. But this is the Sue Maskaleris Tango Duo.
And this piece was recorded on, Pablo has a few CDs out here, and this was recorded on his Tango Grill, Grill, I was going to say girl, CD that was nominated for a Latin Grammy in '09, was it? Or probably, he doesn't even know. So this piece is on his CD that's for sale over there, along with a couple of mine, a couple of his, El Marne. When you play with a master like this, you know when the song is ending. He sounds like Jaws, doesn't he?
Can I add one thing?
What?
I want to add one thing.
Please.
And I want to add one thing. Now, some of you may have noticed that all of a sudden the tango went from bum, ba-dum, bum, bum to just now more like a bum, 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 bum. I don't know if you noticed. I was doing this sort of stuff. Instead of that was awkward. Anyway, but that's what happened to the tango when it got to Argentina. All these rhythms found a style of dance that was just right for European society, believe it or not, because that's really what propelled this music and this genre around the world. Is a word, tango, and a rhythm that had been all over Latin America, but it just ended up being identified with Argentina. And it's because the dance that came out of this was just the right mix of African and European, so that when it was exported to Paris and shown in Paris at the beginning of the 20th century, the Parisians said, "We love it, je l'aime," or whatever they say. And the Argentines had to scramble to go back and learn this music and this dance that had come out from, as they say, the wrong side of the tracks. It was a popular dance, it was a popular music, and all of a sudden the aristocrats who were always looking to Paris to get their cues said, "Oh my God, they're pointing at us. They like that stuff that we don't like. The people around here do." So that's roughly how it got to be so popular. But one thing that happened is that rhythm that invited everybody to sway and perhaps had all of that Africanness in it, got straightened out a little bit, and it got turned into a walk, into a march, which is what tango is. Tango is about walking, two people walking together and stopping also. And while they stop, they do figures, then they walk. But it's not about shaking in any sort of way. No arms, no African dance in it. So it was just dangerous enough, or it was just wild enough, but it was all contained, and the rest is history, as they say. But a lot of it has to do with the rhythm transforming into this very clearly walking beat. That's all. Well, this is a piece that I've recorded, in fact, more than once, and it's called El Pollo Ricardo, which literally means Chicken Richard. And Chicken Richard must have been some guy who was obviously very colorful to have not just a song, but a nickname like that. So El Pollo Ricardo. So we finally come to one of the most famous tangos in the world. It was also written around the turn of the century by a composer who was sort of a vaudevillian. He was a reciter, and monologuist, and joke teller, and a composer as well, by the name of Angel Vigioldo. He had very picturesque, sort of Salvador Dali type mustache, and he was a very flamboyant guy. And he wrote this piece called El Choclo, which is the ear of corn. And nobody knows if this is, there's no minors here, right? Nobody knows if this corn is phallic in reference. Everybody kind of keeps hoping that there's some sort of phallic reference, but we think that it was actually a blonde gentleman who had a mane of blonde hair that reminded Mr. Vigioldo of an ear of corn. So there goes that exciting story. This went around the world not just as El Choclo, but as Kiss of Fire. You may have heard Louis Armstrong singing Kiss of Fire. In fact, Nat King Cole sang El Choclo in Spanish, so it was lovely. So he didn't sing Kiss of Fire, he sang El Choclo. And Mickey Katz, he recorded The Kiss of Meyer, which is a very interesting sort of Jewish take on El Choclo. We're going to do our string duet.
A whole different, Kiss of Fire is a different song entirely. It's the same thing? Oh my goodness. I played it the other night.
Don't make me imitate Louis Armstrong here.
I played it the other night, I didn't recognize.
That's it. All these years.
All right. You start.
Maskaleris, ladies and gentlemen. Multi-talented.
Wow, that was a blast. Oh my goodness, what an honor. He plays with the finest tango violinists in the world. Wow. Well, I mentioned another piece that I wrote. I'd like to welcome a dear friend who came all the way from the city. He's been slaving away at this song since I wrote it, and he does a fine job on clarinet. Please welcome Brad Baker. Many years ago, he taught me arranging. We were working on a children's record, and he helped me write the horn parts, for which I still haven't gotten paid since 1981.
None of us need to have you.
Hey, what's that?
The producer has since passed away. I'd like to tell you a long, sad story about this piece. Actually, I took a book out of this very library called Violins of Hope. And it was about violins that survived the Holocaust and were revived by a violin maker in Israel. And the one particular story really moved me, about a very poor boy who was born in 1930 in the Polish-Ukraine region. His name was Motla Schlein, and when he was 12, he was hiding in a windmill when he heard his whole family get shot and murdered. So he set about avenging their murders. He escaped to the forest barefoot. He was a violinist, and I'm sure better than me. He ran barefoot and joined some freedom fighters. They didn't know he was Jewish. He didn't tell them for at least a year. And he achieved all these missions to take out Nazis. A very clever little boy. And at one point, he was hired by the Nazis to play in a hall for the soldiers where they worked. And he would do a gig, for 8 hours a night with all the drunken Nazis, and they didn't know he was Jewish. And ultimately, he was spying, and he was smuggling in explosives. And he waited till all the SS people were visiting from out of town, and he blew that sucker up. Yeah. So.
Sounds like
It's beautiful. And then he escaped. He swam across the river with his violin over his head. And the next year, they gunned him down in a trench. So this is for him. It's called the Vigilante. And you'll hear a little Jewish flavor to it. Oh, and the big postscript is that his violin found its way to this top violin restorer, Violins of Hope. And it's now at the Holocaust History Museum. And in 2008, a 12-year-old boy performed on it for an audience of 3,000 at the foot of Jerusalem's old city walls. He played the Hatikva on it. So you'll hear the restless sound of him running. Is Brad in the could you see if he's in the view? Could you look in the? Did you look in the thing? Ready? Here we go. Brad Baker. Wow. Pablo Aslan, thank you. Thank you. We got a couple more songs, really. That was excellent. Wow. Fantastic, Brad. We'll do a tango that you probably know. It's sometimes done as a tango. Harry Warren, Al Dubin standard. And once again, I'd like to thank Brad for helping on the sound. The library for having me again 3 times in a row. Don't forget to check out our CDs. I walk along the street of sorrow, the boulevard of broken dreams, where gigolo and gigolette can take a kiss without regret, so they forget their broken dreams. You laugh tonight and cry tomorrow, when you behold your scattered schemes. And gigolo and gigolette wake up to find their eyes are wet with tears that tell of broken dreams. Here is where you'll always find me, always walking up and down. But I left my soul behind me in an old cathedral town. The joy you find here, you borrow. You cannot keep it long, it seems. But gigolo and gigolette still sing a song and dance along the boulevard of broken dreams. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All righty. Well, I do have one more special guest, if you're inclined to have a real treat. Yes? Yes. Okay. The real star of our show. Okay. Here comes the best part. The last few shows, I featured my dad in the end playing the bass. If you would be kind enough to relinquish your bass. Yes?
As long as you don't think I'm your dad.
Steve Maskaleris. 2 months from age 90, but don't tell anyone that. 90. He had a storied career in law after playing in the big bands for many years. Oh no, check the camera, please. Yeah.
You got it?
You have to move the camera now.
Yeah, it's okay.
Can you see me too?
You got it?
Anyway. He used to take me to see all the big bands. Count Basement, Duke Elephant.
Big bands.
Duke Elephant wrote this song.
Barney Goodman.
Anyway, he was a lawyer, as I said. I think he wants to sue my violin teachers. Get along to that A train to take a little ride around the city. Brooklyn or Broadway train. You'll find that old New York is very pretty. Take your baby subway riding. That's where beauty will be hiding. Head on that A train. You'll find that old New York is mighty pretty. You'll find New York is very pretty.
Thank you.
Bravo! Yeah, give a hand. That's bebop and pop there. Beautiful, beautiful job.